Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my January 2024 TBR, the first TBR of the new year. I'm very excited. I have 10 books on my list for this month. I'm very excited for all of them. I am starting several new series. I am continuing a few and reading a couple of standalones, but mostly I'm starting new series in January. So I thought it was kind of, starting the new year, starting a new series. So I'm really excited about all that. So I've got a lot to cover. I have 8 books that I can show you the physical copy of, and then I have 2 books that I will show you a picture of because the book hasn't come out yet, so I can't show you the physical copy. So for the 2 books that are coming out, there's actually 3 releasing in January that I intend to get to. One of them is a self-pub book that is titled A Silent Country, which is the 3rd book in the Low Countries trilogy. You have A Low Country, which is the first book, and A Savage Country, which is the second book, all by Morgan Shank. And I interviewed Morgan on the channel, so just look up Morgan Shank, A Low Country interview, and my name, Jonathan Cohn, and you'll find it. And it's a self-pub trilogy, and I really liked the first 2 books. And so I intend to read the 3rd one. However, that book, it comes out the last day of January, January 31st, and I've already talked with the author, Morgan, and my copy won't be coming in till February sometime. So because of that, that'll just be on my February TBR instead of my January TBR. So that's where that is. So the 2 new releases that I actually intend to get to. The first one is a Brandon Sanderson Cosmere novel. I've heard it's kind of sci-fi and fantasy at the same time, and that is The Sunlet Man. This is Secret Project 4. This is the final of the secret projects to release. All of them released in the year 2023, but this one in particular has released in ebook and in the premium format. But I've been buying them as regular hardcovers through the publisher Tor, and so because of that, I have to wait until that book comes out. So I'm waiting until January 2nd, which is when the book actually releases. And so I'll be reading The Sunlet Man in January, even though a lot of people I know already read it in like October or November. So that'll be one of the new releases I intend to read. Of course, Sanderson, I haven't read a bad book from him. I enjoy all his books, so I'm looking forward to that, although it could be a bad book. Then the second book that releases this month is a Star Wars book. It is part of the High Republic series. It is a middle grade book, so not a young adult or an adult. It's a middle grade book, and it is titled Escape from Valo, and it is a part of the new Phase 3. It's the first of the Phase 3 middle grades. And it is currently listed as being about 350 pages long, which would make it the longest of the middle grade by far. Most of the middle grade thus far have been about 200 pages on the low end to about 200 and maybe 70, 280 on the high end. So they've kind of been in that range. This one being 350 blows the others out of the water. And it's still something that I could probably read it in a day, but that's still pretty long for middle grade. So I'm actually excited to see how that goes as a middle grade. And then I have one final Star Wars book on the list, and then it gets into the copies of books I actually have in my hands. So the final Star Wars book for January is the Han Solo Trilogy, Book 1, The Paradise Snare by A.C. Crispin. This is the first in the Han Solo Trilogy from Bantam Books from the 1990s. A.C. Crispin, famous Star Trek author, also did some Star Wars novels, did other tie-in materials. This book is very well regarded. This whole trilogy is very well regarded among classic EU fans, EU Legends fans. And it's very short. It's only about 300 pages, so it should be a nice quick read. And it'll be, a fun palate cleanser trilogy. I've been doing the epic Young Jedi Knights, which were short books, but it was a long series to get through. It was 14 books. And then I did the Fate of the Jedi, which was a 9-book epic series, and some of the books were like 400 or 500 pages long. So I've been doing long series for Star Wars. So it's going to be nice just to have an EU trilogy that's 300 pages per book, and it's a quick boom, 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 get them all done in 3 months instead of having to be like 5 or 6 months to get through a whole series. So this should be a nice, fun read. Let me know if you've read this and enjoyed it. I have some fantasy novels on my TBR. One of the fantasy novels on my TBR is The Sheep Farmer's Daughter by Elizabeth Moon. This is the first book in the Deed of Paxenarians, so one of the fantasy series I'm intending to start. I got this book for my birthday this year from my family, and I think it has a gorgeous cover. And this is my most anticipated read of the month because I think it's going to be a fun story. I think it tick some of the boxes I'm interested in. When I read about Elizabeth Moon and her backstory and how she infused that into her novels, that also made me interested. This is a classic Bane book, so it's from the 80s. I think it's from like 1988 or 1989, and it is 1988, so I shouldn't doubt myself. Anyway, I'm very excited to read this. I know that I picked this up because I saw Brian Lee Durfee talk about it, and he had the new cover, which I like even more, but I didn't get that. But I'm very excited to read this book, and I have the other two books to read afterwards. I also have another fantasy book that's the start of a series that I'm really excited to read, and that is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. And I've been told that Mark Lawrence's style doesn't always work for everyone, but this is a fairly decent read. It's only about 460 pages. So it's like, you know what, I'll give it a try. And the other two books are even shorter. So I'm like, you know what, I'll try this trilogy, see if I enjoy it. And if I do, wonderful. I have a new author to look forward to. And if I don't enjoy it, oh well. But I'm excited to read more fantasy. I also have some science fiction on my list. For science fiction, the first one is Return to Mars. Now, I read Ben Bova's novel Mars last year. It was absolutely amazing. Mars was my favorite science fiction novel of the year and in contention for my favorite novel of the year that I read in 2023. But I have several of his books. I have some of his books like Venus and Jupiter and Saturn, which start their own kind of series talking about different parts of his grand tour universe. And I've been told you could really start, depending on what planet it is, you could start in like any point. But I've been told that I've already read Mars, so I can go on to the next Mars novel, which is Return to Mars. And I am so excited to get to this. It follows the same character from the first book, Jamie Waterman, who I loved that character, and I cannot wait to see how this book goes down. This one's, it's a tome. It's about 550 pages, so it's not terribly long, but it's a decent length. But I am excited to get back into this universe. It bugs me that this is a different publisher and a very different cover design than the first book, but I'm still very excited to get to this book. The next science fiction book I have is the longest book of the month, and that is Monster Hunter International by Larry Correia. This is the beginning of the Monster Hunter universe that he wrote, and he's still writing a little bit. And Larry Correia is an incredibly controversial person, especially on Twitter. Do not look up his Twitter feed. I'm warning you, don't look it up. You're going to be sad. But I've heard he's a good writer. And I have another Monster Hunter book that the publisher sent me, and so I've been thinking about getting into his books, and this is the first one. It's about 700 pages, so it's a little bit on the longer side, but it's manageable, and I'm excited to see if I enjoy it. If I love it, I have this whole brand new expansive universe to read, and if not, oh well, it's just one book that I'm committing to. Next, I have Star Trek. I have 2 Star Trek books on the list this month. The first one's really short. It's probably the shortest book I'll read this month besides the middle grade Star Wars, and that is Star Trek IKS Gorkin, Book 1, A Good Day to Die. This is part of Keith R.A. DeCandido's A Good Day to IKS Gorkin series, which follows a Klingon ship called the Gorkin, named after Chancellor Gorkon. And Keith DeCandido is known as the Klingon author for Star Trek books. There are other authors that I think do as well, if not better. One I would specifically point to is John Jackson Miller, who did the Prey trilogy, which is not only my favorite Star Trek storytelling of all time, but it follows my favorite Star Trek species, the Klingons. But I've also read several books now, like I think 3 by Keith DeCandido, and all of them he's done a great job with the Klingon characters. So I am very excited to see what he does here. It's a very short book. It's only about 270 pages and pretty large print, but Keith Cannon is a good author. It's the first of a 3-book series that has a spin-off at the end. So it's like 4 books following these characters. And so I'm very excited to see where it goes, and if I enjoy it, I have the other books to read. And I have the second book signed. The first book's not signed, but the second book's signed, so I'm very excited about that. The other Star Trek book I have is the book More Beautiful Than Death by David Mack. Yes, this is a Kelvin timeline novel featuring the Kelvin timeline versions of the characters and the Kelvin plotline in the universe. The short history of this book is that it was published, or it was written back when Star Trek 2009 was set to come out, and it was one of 4 novels that was scheduled to release. And then the authors wrote them and all this stuff, and then for a couple of reasons, the publisher took them off of the publication schedule. The authors just couldn't release the books. And then about 10 years later, it was supposed to come out in 2010, 10 years later in 2020, they were able to rework them and put them on the publication schedule. 2 of them made it, 2 of them didn't. And the 2 that made it were The Unsettling Stars by Alan Dean Foster and More Beautiful Than Death by David Mack. And I really enjoyed the Kelvin timeline universe. It breaks so much continuity, but I like the actors involved, and I like how it has subtle changes. And I personally think we should have a post-Nemesis version, like doing like an expansive storyline, but do that with the Kelvin timeline. But that's just me. The final book that I intend to read in January 2024 is Divergent by Veronica Roth. It is a young adult dystopian novel. I had no intention of reading this. Ordinarily, I'm trying to get into YA and stuff, but the reason I picked this book out is because a loyal viewer of this channel has been asking me to read it for a while, and he sent in a super chat, and I said, you know what, I'm going to use the money from the super chat to buy the book. And I did, and I also got the sequels for Christmas, which you'll see in my January book haul. And so I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot, and if I enjoy it, I'll read the sequels, and I think I will enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to it. So that is Divergent. So that is my January 2024 TBR. I got YA, I got Star Trek, I got science fiction, I got fantasy, I got Star Wars, and I got new releases. So I've got a lot of variety, and I'm very excited to read all of it. If you have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And if you're interested in any of them, reading them, let me know that as well. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.